do right here is go back. Way back. Back into time.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology.
Celebrating 20 years of New England Championship Wrestling. This is the Regeneration Podcast.
And now, here are your hosts, Sheldon Goldberg, Joe Matarazzo, and Kevin Castro.
Welcome, everyone, once again to the Regeneration Podcast. Sheldon Goldberg here, along with Joe Matarazzo and Kevin Castro. We are looking back at 20 years of New England Championship Wrestling. Not all in this episode, but part of 20 years of NECW in this episode. Joe, how are you doing?
Very good, very good. Here we are, another week.
Good to have you aboard. Good to have you aboard as always, Kevin Castro.
Yeah. Kevin Castro.
Yes.
Yeah, apparently so.
Exactly. Kevin, how are you?
I am fantastic. Surviving. How are you guys? Everything good? Everyone safe?
Everyone's good. It's been an interesting week. A lot of interesting things happening. We're going to talk about two matches in the 20th anniversary collection. We're going to go back to November 18th of 2006 and the NECW Heavyweight Championship on the line as the Human Nightmare, Evan Siks, takes on former NECW champion at that particular time, DC Dillinger. And then, from there, we're going to go a couple of years later as DC Dillinger teams with diehard Eddie Edwards, the renowned team of Sabotage, greatest tag team in NECW history, as they take on the tag team of the infamous Bobby Fish and someone we talked about last week, the Golden Greek Alex Arion. So those are the matches that we're going to talk about, and we're going to get into some news. We got a couple of questions that came in from some of my longtime friends that have corresponded with me over the years. It was nice to hear from them. We're going to get to that later on in the program, and we're going to talk about a couple of news items as well. So let's get to our first match. We're going to talk about the Human Nightmare Evan Siks, who was the NECW champion at that particular time, as he took on DC Dillinger. Managed by Sean Gorman, and in this particular match, Sean Gorman is prevented from interfering in the match by being handcuffed to a future NECW champion in Big Rick Fuller. So, Joe, we'll start with you. What were your impressions?
Well, I'll tell you what. What's that?
You were around at the time, am I correct?
Not during this one with Evan Siks. I was not for this one. I came in right after. Not long after this match.
Okay.
So, what I did like about both these matches is the fact that we get to immortalize DC Dillinger.
Right.
Taken from us way too young, way too soon. So to watch these matches, I haven't seen a DC match in a long time. And, being a few years removed now, it was really good to see. It was nice to watch. I loved how during the match, DC was able to he got a lot of heat in on Siks, was really getting that crowd amped up. Every time Evan tried to get something on, he'd cut him off, and he kept him on the ride, kept you on the ride. He was very, very good at it. I really enjoyed watching that. And then, of course, the whipped cream and cherry on top of the whole thing is Gorman.
Right.
I mean, he gave the audience everything they wanted. From when he was able to take the big bumps at the end from Rick Fuller, and just his antics before he even got handcuffed, getting that crowd ready, that they were ready to lynch him and throw him in there and cuff him up themselves.
Right.
And it's just an art form. The way he does it is such an art form.
He was so polished for someone at his level of experience. It really was amazing.
It came so natural to him, and it was a treat to see this match. This was a good match. Even when Triplicious came in and interferes towards the end of the match, and then disappears and takes off, and nobody knows what's going on, and leaves him to leaves poor Gorman to just get his head handed to him.
Right.
Not once, but twice.
Right.
And it was a dynamite. That was a great match to watch. A lot of fun to watch. Good violence in it without going. It wasn't too over the top, but it had enough good stuff, some nostalgia in it with the wood being grounded into when DC was putting it into Evan's head. Reminded me of Tully and Magnum back in the day. So it was good. It was a good street fight. I liked it.
Very, very NWA style.
Very, and you know what? It's always good to see that building. That was my building right there, the Quincy Armory. I love that building. So to see that just and the different way it was set up and everything too, the way the entrance and everything was changed from when I was there. It was fantastic.
That's a building that had a lot of natural atmosphere, which is very hard to find.
Yes.
In wrestling buildings.
And
Kevin,
for a place that had no parking.
Right.
It
was a challenge. It was a challenge. Kevin, what were your thoughts?
That was the first time that I have actually watched that match. I very much enjoyed Sean Gorman's theatrics as they were trying to put the handcuffs on him. It was just over the top enough to not become hokey or cheesy, until you viciously threatened him for him to actually comply. It's one of the things that jumped out at me, especially during the current era, so to speak. Evan Siks, years ahead of his time by wearing a face mask, walking out to the ring.
Good call.
Very much so.
Using that same logic, did DC get that piece of wood out of the garbage? Is that where that came? Or was that under the ring? I didn't see. I saw a trash can on the ground with a whole bunch of trash, and then I saw him pick up the piece of wood and jab it in Evan's open wound. And my first thought was, "Oh, germs! Oh no!" So I don't know if that's going to be a future stipulation match. My question is, who was booking during this time?
Well, it was supposed to be Matt West, but it was really George Carroll.
Okay. And the only reason I ask is I personally am not a fan of a babyface going over with outside interference, because I think that it takes away from the babyface. The fact that the pinfall actually came after Rick Fuller chokeslammed DC. It wasn't like it was a choke slam and then something else led up to something.
Right.
And then he was pinned. It was directly after that. And it's very difficult to watch matches, whether it be local matches, whether it be television matches, without the mentality of what would I have done differently, or I wouldn't have done that. And that was just one of the things that stuck out to me. I'm all for someone coming out, like when Triplicious came out, if Fuller got in there, chased Triplicious off, and then Evan was able to capitalize off of that. But it was just, it didn't sit right with me that was the actual finish. Well,
you have to realize that you're talking about an inexperienced crew when it comes to booking. I mean, none of us worked in a wrestling office. None of us, we're all, I wouldn't say that we were making it up as we go on, because we've all been around the business and in the business, but, it's not like we were experienced bookers. We had a lot of ambition, and we did the best we could, given what we had to work with. Not to say that you're not right, but, the other thing, too, is how I can forgive that is the fact that, DC and Gorman, there was a lot of chicanery in their matches. So this was sort of like karma. This was their comeuppance. So I can kind of forgive that type of a finish for that reason. And I think for that reason, audience-wise, it worked.
Well, the crowd loved it. The crowd definitely loved it.
Right.
And they loved the shenanigans at the end with Gorman, which I was actually surprised he let them do as much as they did.
I don't think he had a choice. I've been in there with Rick Fuller. You don't have a choice when he decides to do things.
Exactly.
Probably, arguably, has probably one of the hardest chops I've ever felt in my life. Him and Eddie Edwards. So you just got to kind of go with it. So I give it all to Sean. Sean, God love him.
He got out easy, if you want to put it that way. Then
he really did.
Right.
He did.
Right.
But you're right, though, Kevin. For the most part, yes, you wouldn't have the baby face go over in a heelish way like that. But to Sheldon's, and maybe it's because I was around right at that time too, right after this. We were waiting for that to happen to DC and to Gorman, and for that to materialize. Mm-hmm. So, which of course, leading up to it makes sense. When you're seeing it just for itself right now, then your opinion and what you see is spot on. But in the case of the angle and what had been leading up to it, it was a perfect finish.
Interesting thing about this match and the other match that we're going to talk about is it really showcases DC's skills.
Yes,
he was maybe arguably the most important champion in NECW history. He brought that level of heat to everything that he did, and the Siks Evan feud, the Siks DC feud rather, was a big one because those guys really weren't working other places too much. Evan wasn't working any other place, and DC was you rarely saw him outside of NECW at that point. So the fact that we had a unique matchup that you couldn't see anywhere else, that drove business. That and it was shortly after the unification of the NECW and the PWF titles. So there was a lot of natural wonder as to what was going to happen there, how we were going to unify the titles and how we were going to move forward. So there was a lot of natural curiosity about that. There was a natural buzz around that. And those guys, each one of them played their role very, very well.
Was there any conflict between the two camps coming together?
No, not really, because the truth is there weren't very many people on the NECW side brought in. The only ones that were really brought in were Sabotage, DC and Eddie, and Arion, and I think that's pretty much it. The rest of the guys were very loyal to Bob Evans, and one by one, they came over, the ones that we wanted anyway. But it wasn't really much of a conflict at all. I embraced everybody like they were my guy. So I didn't really have a problem with anyone. I didn't look at anyone as, oh, you're the other guy's guy. No, not at all. I was very fond of Evan. I thought Evan did a great job in his role. The only problem with Evan is he would want to change his gimmick every now and then. He couldn't just be the Human Nightmare Evan Siks. He had to keep tinkering with his gimmick and his persona, and instead of just sticking with it and making the best of it. He wanted to be an MMA guy at one point, so he and Nick Steele had an MMA gimmick that they did.
Yep.
We brought them back, if you remember, in NECW, him and
Apocalypse.
Apocalypse, yes, as the end, and then Lumberjack. So, but it was hard to put a gimmick on Evan. He wanted to do his own deal. He wanted to go his own way, and unfortunately, sometimes that doesn't work. You've got to go along with the program. And it was hard for him to do that sometimes. But Evan was, in his element, he was good in his role. And as I say, that program with him and DC was the best drawing program up to that point in the history of the company. So they both were very, very effective. Let's move ahead a couple of years to a match from January 19th of 2008. It's Sabotage, DC Dillinger, and diehard Eddie Edwards, with Sean Gorman as their manager, taking on the infamous Bobby Fish and the Golden Greek Alex Arion. Now, the backstory to this match is, back in May of 2007, at the Iron 8 for that year, the final came down to diehard Eddie Edwards and Bobby Fish. And at the finish of the match, Bobby Fish broke his ankle doing a Falcon Arrow off the top rope with Edwards.
Right.
Everything stopped at that point. Fish was taken out by ambulance and so forth. So this was Fish's comeback to NECW. It took him quite a while to, get his legs under him, so to speak. He was now back looking for his revenge on Eddie Edwards. This was to lead up to the next Iron 8 where Fish was supposed to go over didn't quite happen that way. But so this was Bobby Fish coming back and looking to get revenge on diehard Eddie Edwards. So that's the backstory of the match. This is a classic Sabotage tag match. Sabotage were tag champions, I think, 5 times.
Yeah, 4 or 5 times, yeah.
Right, and they were almost the perfect team, if you think about it. The style of DC and the style of Eddie Edwards meshed perfectly as a team. One had strengths, the other one didn't. Eddie Edwards was, at this point, a polished pro. He'd been going to Japan, as Fish had been going to Japan as well. Both for Pro Wrestling Noah. So they had a lot of experience on a big level, those two guys. DC doesn't get enough credit for the caliber of a worker he was. He had kind of a deliberate style, but very, very effective. And like I say, he could get heat like nobody else. Joe, what were your thoughts when you watched this?
So again, I loved watching the whole thing, watching DC and everybody else get out there, and it was awesome how Bobby Fish continued the whole ankle story by constantly, no matter what he was doing, if he was in there with DC, he'd get rid of DC and go right after Eddie. Right. His focus was on Eddie, so he continuously chased Eddie around the ring to where the two of them. So that story never died. It kept going. It never got lost, which was amazing. And the fact that you look at where Eddie Edwards is today, and you look at where Bobby Fish is today, and it's no wonder, because they were mat technicians right then and there, back in 2008. You're talking 12 years ago.
Right.
12 years ago. It's no wonder where they are, right? As long as both of them stayed healthy, and they did. And I mean, some of the combinations and moves and things that they were doing, that they were calling on the fly, was unbelievable. And then you've got DC and you got Arion, 2 pillars keeping everything going. Arion played his role perfect as not being able to be there as much as he could. So Bobby, carried the whole thing. But it was more of a showcase for Bobby anyway. And again, Bobby was one of my favorite people to work with and be around. Bobby the Fish. That's him.
Yeah, Bobby the Fish.
Bobby the Fish. And then to see DC get the win at the end over Arion, that was perfect. He had it all under control.
Handful of tights right out of the Sabotage playbook.
It was perfect.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly. With Gorman still cheerleading and going around making all the distractions and the noises. It was perfect.
Right. Kevin, your thoughts?
Right off the bat, I mean, if you were to put Bobby Fish and Eddie Edwards in the ring right now, I mean, that's a dream match. People would love to see that. And it was right in their laps. That's one of the things that it baffles me. I agree with Joe. I think that the storytelling of Bobby wanting revenge against Eddie throughout the entire match, it was almost as if, the other two were there, but he was looking right through them because all he wanted was to get his hands on Eddie Edwards. It was just, it's storytelling. It's something that's missed nowadays. It's like you have your backstory, you have the match, you have where you're leading up to. Everything should connect. And this was connect the dots right there. So you could see pretty much where the two of them were heading. And like you guys were saying, the dirty win. Right when you think that, you have them beat, whether it be strength in numbers, whether it be Gorman on the outside, whether it be a handful of tights, it's, win if you can, lose if you must, but always cheat.
I'd be hard-pressed, I think, in the history of New England wrestling to find a better tag team than those two guys. Sabotage.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
agree.
You look back at that match, you look at Eddie Edwards and Bobby Fish. 12 years ago, you could have put either of those guys or both of those guys on national television and had a classic.
Yep, absolutely.
In fact, if you check out on our YouTube channel the Legendary series, there is a match between diehard Eddie Edwards and Bobby Fish, an all-time classic, a match that went about 30 minutes, and just an incredible display. One of the best matches you'll ever see. anywhere, in any ring. And that's on our YouTube channel. So when you get through with this, check it out. By the way, the matches that we're talking about right now are linked below in the description. So if you want to stop and watch the matches and come back to the podcast, or if you want to watch them after, you're at your leisure to do that, of course. But that's where you can find them. We've provided them there for your convenience. You talk about the importance of people to a company. And the thing that generates business in wrestling is good heels. You couldn't get better than DC Dillinger and Gorman. I mean, how can you top those guys? Really, we were so fortunate to have those guys, leading the charge. It just, when you look back at it and you see it in front of you, it just rings so true that they were the greatest.
Yeah, DC could generate so much heat, and Gorman was just a heat-seeking missile. Every time he didn't even have to open his mouth.
No,
and you wanted to shut it for him. So
right.
He was he. I don't even know if he realized how talented he was. And maybe I don't know, because if he didn't, I mean, he made it look effortless.
He made it look effortless. Is absolutely correct.
He made it look effortless.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a shame that he never found, at least to this point, hopefully that'll change. He may still have some time to do it, to find a national platform to display his skills. I'd put him in with any company, and he'd be very, very effective.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Incredibly talented.
Yeah.
Incredibly.
Yeah.
Even just reading his book, highly entertaining. Like, everything that he does is just entertaining. It draws you in.
A very intelligent guy.
Yes.
I don't know if you know this, Kevin. Originally, he was the co-host of the Mouthpiece Wrestling Show with me, but he wanted to manage. He didn't want to transition to media or anything like that. He wanted to do. He was dedicated to his art. He wanted to be a manager, and he wanted to work in a lot of different places. And for that reason, it just didn't work out. But everything worked out as far as the Mouthpiece Wrestling Show goes. Everything worked out the way it was supposed to work out. And,
I think so.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So let's move on to a couple of other things. I've got a couple of questions that were sent in from longtime friends who have been following NECW for years. As I pull them up on my phone, bear with me for just a moment. This first question comes from a longtime NECW fan and friend by the name of Danny Houghton. He's from Bristol in the United Kingdom.
Hello, Denny.
Yes. Cheerio, old boy. Sheldon, I am enjoying your podcast, and your 20th anniversary collection of matches has been superb. I appreciate especially your behind-the-scenes comments on the matches. I have a few questions on this latest show, meaning last week's shows. Did you ever confront Max Bauer about him losing on another company's show? Did he offer any explanation for it? How did the other wrestlers react to what he did? And also, whatever happened to Max Bauer? Hope you're keeping well, your friend Danny. Well, Danny, thank you for the question, first of all. To answer the first part, did I ever confront Max directly? No, I did not. If I did, I would have completely flown off the handle, and steam would have been coming out of my ears and so forth, and that wouldn't have been a pretty sight.
Would have looked like Vader's mask.
Something like that.
Yes.
Yeah. It would not have been fun, not have been pretty. I didn't confront him directly. We just did what we did. We moved him into another role. We got the belt off of him. As I said last week, that was a mistake. The way not the taking of the belt off of him and putting it on Brandon Locke. It was the way that it was done. It was rushed off of him because it was an emotional decision, not because it was a smart business decision. We continued to do business with Max because we'd invested so much in him, but it was the wrong way to do it. We put the belt on the right person. We just did it the wrong way. Did he offer any explanation? I heard from third parties that his explanation was that Rick Fuller had gotten a hold of him and asked him to come and work on Big Time Wrestling and do him a favor. That is what we call one of the oldest dirty promoter tricks that there is. And what I mean by that is, here's another company locally. We're about to go on TV. This guy's been on the front page of a major metropolitan newspaper, which never happens. That's a huge thing. And this other company decides, well, here's what we'll do. We'll book this guy on a show. We'll have him lose to our guy. And then we'll show it on our TV and say, hey, that company's can't be any better than us because their guy lost to our guy. We're the greatest company. It's dumb. It's something that doesn't make any sense the deeper you look at it. But people think that's a way to get over on somebody. Max should have been a little smarter about it. But again, he was young, so
Right.
You can't. It's not about him working for somebody else. You can't stop people from working for other people. But when you invest that type of a push and that type of promotion behind someone, you expect that they're going to protect that push and respect it and not do anything to damage it. As far as the other wrestlers go, there were a couple of people that came to me and said how disappointed they were because they wish they had that push for themselves. They wish it was them on the front page of the Boston Herald and not Max. Right. They felt that a wrestling promotion is everybody involved in it. It's not just one guy. It's not just one guy does something and the promotion, the promoters are affected. It's one guy and the whole card is affected. Everybody that put him over had to be a little bit ticked off because, here they are making this guy look good and he goes and he does something like that. He goes and disrespects his push. There's other ways that he could have handled it. He could have done a count-out finish. He could have done a DQ finish. But no, he went and he did a favor. He goes, oh, Rick Fuller is the man. No, buddy, I'm the man. I'm the guy that put you on the front page of the newspaper. I'm the guy that promoted the hell out of you. No, I'm the man. And you should have at least protected my business and everybody else's business that was involved. And he didn't do it. And that's why we were disappointed in him. Whatever happened to him? Well, Max Bauer eventually signed with WWE. He went to NXT. He wrestled under the name of Mickey Keegan. And he suffered an injury that ended his career. He worked for them as a producer for a little while, then they let him go. And he's out of the business. He manages a restaurant now, I believe. But Max Bauer out of the business. And the other question that I got, this question is from my old friend Ron Holder from Des Moines, Iowa. And this is a rambling question, so I'm gonna try to paraphrase. The gist of what he's asking has to do with booking. And it again has to do with this Brandon Locke situation, why we put the belt on him and what we could have done or whatever. But he says here, I wonder if you could go back in time and do one thing differently, booking-wise, what would it be? Well, first of all, Ron, thanks for the question. And the answer is actually very easy. One thing that we teased but never followed through on was at the Iron 8 that took place in 2006. We had a match in the first round between DC Dillinger and Eddie Edwards. And the place lit up. What was going to happen? Eddie Edwards went over and he eventually won that tournament. But we missed the boat. We should have started a slow build of a feud between DC Dillinger and Eddie Edwards, with Sean Gorman trying to decide between the two of them. The following year, we did a program between DC Dillinger and Brian Fury that ended in a cage match, and it was one of DC's favorite matches, and we've shown that match on TV as part of a tribute to DC after he passed away. But had it been Eddie Edwards in that spot instead of Brian Fury, it would have been huge. I think that would have been an enormous program. The two of them were so tight and they were so associated with each other. To start a conflict between the two of them and build that up over a period of time and blow it off, that would have been, in my opinion, that was an opportunity that we should have seized. But it was one of those things where these guys are friends in real life, and they're like brothers in real life, and they didn't want to be at odds with each other, even in the kayfabe world of pro wrestling. Which I think that's a shame. I don't know what you guys think about that. I've always regretted that we never did that program.
Yeah, I think that would have been something. I think DC would have benefited huge working against Eddie. He benefited working with him
Right.
technically, and I think their style. I mean, styles make a fight, and the two different styles. I think he would have learned a lot working against him in a program for a while.
I think it would have elevated him. I really
Sure.
do. Kevin, what are your thoughts about that?
Would have been a great story. Absolutely would have been a great story. And there's so many directions that you could have gone with that. I like the idea of Gorman trying to decide between the two. That way you're not having the typical babyface turn because the team turns on him. This could be, you could have let it be organic. The fans get behind, who they naturally were drawn to. You could have even, if you wanted to overcomplicate it, you could have had the two of them fighting for a while, Gorman kind of representing both of them, bringing in the next team to beat them both up.
Yeah.
So that way they would have had their feud, they would have elevated each other, and then would have been brought back to fight the common enemy. I mean, that's one of the things I love about the story is you can have a plan of where it's going, but you can always change it to go someplace else if need be. I've never been a fan of this is where we're supposed to go, so no matter what happens, this is where we're going. This is how, if the fans hate it, nope, they're gonna like it eventually because this is the vision that we have. You have to be able to change.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can't force feed him.
I brought up the idea of the two of them feuding. I pushed for it, and they shot it down. They just, oh no, we can't do that. Oh no, it was George. George was, I can't do that. Big mistake, in my opinion. Big mistake. But hindsight, as they say, is 20/20. A couple of other things we're going to talk about. Some stories in the news. Number one, I see that Serena Deeb became the new NWA Women's Champion, defeating Thunder Rosa. There's some question as to what's going to happen with Thunder Rosa. There was a report today online that, according to Billy Corgan, Thunder Rosa is under contract with the NWA until 2021, so she's not really going anywhere. What prompted the title change? Who knows? Maybe it's just booking. But this title change took place on United Wrestling Network Primetime Live this past week. So another reason to catch that if you, it's a weekly pay-per-view on Fight. Another reason to catch that. So some interesting things going on, some headline-grabbing things. I think Thunder Rosa is terrific.
Oh yeah, yeah, she's dynamite.
She's going to be money wherever she goes.
Yeah, Serena Deeb's a great talent too, but if they're doing this just to have a feud between the two, Serena Deeb, of course, is under contract to AEW, and Thunder Rosa has appeared in AEW. So some interesting things. Hopefully that means that there is a working agreement between AEW and the NWA. I think that'd be good for business all around, especially during the pandemic.
Be great.
The NWA is kind of in a state of flux. But it's good to know that Thunder Rosa isn't leaving the NWA fold because, they've already lost Ricky Starks to AEW. They've had a number of talent losses. And I'd just like to see that product succeed. I'd like to see that product back doing NWA Power in the studio the way they were doing it before. That was my favorite wrestling show on TV. Everything old is new again, as they say. So I'm hoping that Billy Corgan, in my opinion, is a brilliant individual, and I'm thinking that he knows where he wants to go with things. He knows how to plot the course, and it was thrown a curve by the pandemic, as everybody's been. But I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward. I'm glad that Dave Marquez has the United Wrestling Network Primetime Live. I'm glad they have that platform. And they're able to at least have some sort of exposure out there, while we're trying to cope with the pandemic. So, looking forward to seeing what happens with that. Another interesting little note in the news is Beyond Wrestling. I'm not a fan of Beyond Wrestling. I'll get into that at another time. Really not the place for it. But Beyond Wrestling canceled all their shows for the rest of the calendar year. And my hat is off to them in this particular case. Well, I say I'm not really a fan of Beyond Wrestling. And why that is, we won't go into right now. We'll save that for another day. But, when I see somebody doing the right thing and saying, you know what, we can't do this safely, let's not do it, then I have to applaud them. There's a lot of other companies out there that continue to produce some kind of product, some kind of way, some of which probably shouldn't. And it's nice to see somebody making a good decision for once.
I agree with that decision as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely made the right decision.
With the positive COVID cases that have happened on some of the independent shows, the Collective, was it? That big event that took place in Indiana. There was a number of positive cases. I think they did the right thing. Absolutely did the right thing. You don't want to take any chances with people on either side of the curtain. So hats off to Beyond Wrestling for putting everything on the back burner, at least until next year. I was involved in a little bit of a brouhaha on Facebook this past week. I happened to catch, and I'm not going to name names here, and I'll get into why, but I happened to catch a clip that a local wrestler posted from a show that Limitless Wrestling does on this independent wrestling TV network. It's a streaming network. I think Smart Mark Video runs it. It's called The Road. And I saw a clip of about 30 seconds of this match, and just, this is not good. This is caca. And I turned around and I posted, without naming any names and without saying anything overtly negative, is that I watched this clip from Limitless Wrestling, and I was underwhelmed, to say the least. That's the term that I used. And is there anything on that network that's worth watching? And someone named Mark Sterling, who I believe is appeared on AEW recently. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah. Kind of took me to task for it. He said, what was the problem? What didn't I like? Did I not like the talent? Well, it's a pandemic. They're using students and whoever they can get locally. Is it the production? They're trying to do things on a low budget because they're not running shows. Frankly, I didn't answer him. I'm using this forum to answer that question. And Mark, I'll tell you exactly what I found so offensive, and that was the commentary. I can get away with something being shot on a shoestring, because no big revelation here, NECW has been done on a shoestring for 20 years. Now, we're the masters of doing stuff on a shoestring. So that doesn't enter into it. Talent, I'm not even going to mention the names, because they're out there trying to put on a good match. That's all they're trying to do. They're just trying to work and trying to get better and try to do something good. But this show had an announcer that made it sound like he's calling Mystery Science Theater 3000. It was like a big joke. If I want to watch something that's being called like a big joke, I'll watch like What's Up Tiger Lily or something like that. Why would you make a choice like that? When you have a guy go, oh, this match is fun, and we're having fun, and get away. I don't want to waste my time. Why would you do that to the talent? At least try to portray them as having some sort of credibility and some sort of impact. Don't make it sound like it's all a big joke. If that's your definition of modern wrestling, that doesn't benefit anybody. To me, and this is just me, feel free to disagree with me. I don't care if you disagree. You have every right to disagree if you don't feel the same way. I'm not going to hate you for disagreeing with me. But wrestling should be called with some degree of giving the people involved credibility in the form that they're in. If you can't do that, don't do it. That's how I feel about that. A lot of people try to get away with funny stuff as a byproduct of modern wrestling. that it's okay to be funny and haha. Well, the old saying goes, funny don't draw money. But, I mean, okay, comedy has its place. We've certainly done some comedic things in our company now and then, but it didn't overwhelm the company. It was an aside, it was an escape valve. But if that's
and it didn't define the company.
Right. If that's what your company's about, then I think it's a waste of time. But that's just my opinion. I've never been to a Limitless Wrestling show, and, you know, they have a following. They've run the Portland Expo. They've run a big venue. I have respect for the fact that they've been able to draw fans, and they've been able to, build a business out of that in a state like Maine, which has no major league sports. I mean, they're in the ideal setting to be able to draw significantly, and they've done so. So I have a lot of respect for that, but I don't have respect for a company that makes its people look like crap. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that's my opinion.
I can't say that I've seen it. The two of us had a discussion about it. I believe my exact words were making friends this morning.
Yeah.
It's difficult because, and I don't want to get off topic, but I think that there's nothing wrong with having an opinion on anything, and not everyone is going to agree with your opinion. In the social media age, unfortunately, if somebody disagrees with your opinion, it's a fight. It's stirring the pot, There's other people who are going to pander to try to get a job at one company or another, by tagging people. And I just think it gets overblown. It gets made into a much bigger situation than it should have been. I've always been a proponent of promote what you love, don't draw attention to what you don't like. I've also been a proponent of I'm not going to try to bring something to attention that I don't think deserves to get attention. I'm not going to promote if I don't like Joe, I'm going to be like, oh, look what Joe's wearing, because now everyone's going to look at what Joe's wearing, and it's completely defeating the purpose of that I want everyone to not look at Joe. As simplistic as that sounds.
Right.
And Joe, I like what you're wearing, don't get me wrong.
Right.
I appreciate that. Right. Thank you.
No, I don't hate Beyond Wrestling. I don't hate any of the people that I saw. I didn't like the announcing. I thought it was a very poor choice on the part of the promoter who makes that choice of how to portray his product. I'm trying to be fair here. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm not trying to be. I'm not trying to assassinate anyone's character or whatever. But that's a lousy choice, and that's my opinion. And I'm not going to be afraid to express my opinion because it's a free country, and that's what America's all about.
No, and you know what? He asked you. Mm-hmm. He asked you what you didn't like. So if you would be doing a disservice to anybody in the business if they asked you, what did you think? You hear the veterans all the time in the locker rooms that always say it. Someone will always say, yo, can you watch my match? Let me know how my match was. They come to the back. How was my match? And you got the guys that are going to sit there, the girls that are going to sit there, and they're going to blow smoke up their ass. That's great. You're not helping them. You can critique little things. You can explain to them whether or not that talent decides to accept that, or they think that you're a big know-it-all. And you look, if you're gonna ask, you've got to be willing to hear it. As far as announcing goes, that's one of the most important aspects of a match, because not only are the guys supposed to be telling the story in the ring, but the announcer should be following and explaining that story in such depth that everyone can follow. And now it's making more sense to what everybody's watching. And without that aspect, if you're treating it as a joke, look at our time here is short. What we're doing, what we have to do, everybody's lives get in the way. If you're asking me to invest an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, Monday Night Raw, of my time, make it worth my while to invest that time for me to watch. And if you want to know why I don't want to watch, and I tell you, well, don't assassinate me for telling you what I think. It's subjective. It's also, some guys may like the ha-ha stuff, but the ha-ha stuff should be organic. It should work its way into a conversation. It should work its way in during the match or during the storytelling, and then it becomes natural instead of trying to make it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect to hear Jim Ross and Gordon Soley calling Limitless Wrestling. I don't expect.
They'll call it something.
Yeah, but I don't. I don't. My expectation is not that it's going to be a super pro calling it, but give it some dignity. It doesn't matter what your vocal qualities are. You can give something dignity without making it sound like it's as I said, Mystery Science Theater 3000. I mean, come on, it doesn't benefit your talent to portray them that way. And that's another thing. I didn't mention the names of the people in the match, and I won't, because it's not their fault. They're just trying to be good. There's people that work for that company that have worked for us. We're pro talent. What we've done over the years is try to make, non-stars look like stars. That's been the sum total of our business. So, we're trying to help, not hurt. So my point is this: I wish them the best. But they should really, really think about how they are presenting their product to people. They should really think about how they're presenting their talent to people. And they should build those people. They should build those people and make them more valuable, not less valuable. So, end of rant. Any thoughts on anything this week? Anything that you've been watching that stands out?
What have I been watching? I watched 2 NECW matches.
Did you catch Halloween Havoc?
I did.
I have not watched that yet.
I didn't know if I was going to, and then I heard the reviews, I read the reviews, and now I want to go back and watch it.
Yeah.
I heard there was a lot of really good things. I heard they hooked you right off the bat. I've been so apt to watch AEW that I start off with AEW, and if they hook me, great. Which they did. This week was a good week for them, but it was just a good week for them. Halloween Havoc seems like that really, the booking and everything that I heard, and NXT should be on Monday nights. It should the storytelling and the way that things are being played out, and I wish it was on Monday nights. I wish it was on a different night than AEW, so I didn't have to choose.
That's why God invented the DVR.
I DVR AEW and still watch it, so go figure.
I didn't watch AEW this week. I watched NXT, and it wasn't bad. It had some good moments. It had some meh moments, but it was nice for the nostalgia. There's some nostalgia. I won't spoil it for you. There's some nostalgic moments in there. I thought overall it wasn't a waste of my time. Not a complete waste of my time anyway. I thought there was a lot of good stuff on that show. I thought, this week I thought it sounded better. The number of people that they had and the Thunderdome gimmick that they have there in the Performance Center. The crowd sounded better. The people sounded more like a substantial crowd this time than it has in previous weeks. And that made a difference to me.
What'd you think about Hell in a Cell?
I didn't see all of it. I saw the Sasha Bailey match, which I thought was very good. That
should have been main event. I think that was the match of the night.
Right.
Absolutely.
I thought the McIntyre Randy Orton match was good for what it was. But I think Sasha and Bailey stole the show.
Yeah. Yep. Story of the night, I think, was definitely Roman. They didn't need to have that in a cage. The fact that they had it in the cell and didn't really use the cell that way, I think it actually made it more important that way. Because if you notice the other 2 Hell in a Cell matches, they were trying to get out. People were trying to get out of the cell and work outside the cell. Where in this one, everyone was trying to get in to help Jay, and the ending of it, phenomenal. I was watching it with my son Nick, and the two of us, when Roman started breaking down, the two of us looked at each other, and I looked right at Nick and I said, "This is storytelling," because we were getting emotional watching this, going, "Where is this going?" It was unbelievable. The drama that they brought was fantastic. It's some of the best storytelling I've seen in years. So storytelling of the night definitely goes to them.
All right.
I did like the story with that. My question is, in the history of WWE, WWF, with the exception of Bret Hart, Bob Backlund, has there been an I Quit match where the person actually quits because they were put in something themselves? Because almost every single time they have it, it's somebody else is put into a hold and they stop the match to save them. They've done it numerous times, or they have the audio of something saying I quit. It's never been a legitimate, again, with the exception of Backlund, that's the only one that I could think of without going way back in time. Which, when we're talking time travel, are we doing DeLorean? Are we doing phone booth?
Yeah. Well, the I Quit match, that was an NWA. That was an NWA concept. You never saw that in the WWF.
No.
You never saw that. The blow-offs in the WWF were steel cage or Texas Death Match.
Right.
Those were the blow-off matches that the WWF was famous for.
And now WWE starts feuds with those.
Right. Exactly.
It makes no sense to me. Where do you go from there?
Well, it's a hot shot mentality.
I do think the women were amazing in the cage. To me, that sold the show. I would have hated to have gone on after them.
Yeah,
right.
I felt bad for McIntyre and Orton because they had to follow that.
And they did a good job.
They did.
They did a good job. But you know, again, it's corny enough with the going up on the top of the cage. You know, it's been done to death.
Right.
You know, and then someone's going through the table. You know it, and it's just, you know, it's just at that point there. That's when I'll take a bathroom break. You know what I mean? Because I know what's going to happen. They'll show the replay 75 times before the end of the match.
But that's the problem with doing it every single year.
Right.
That's it.
You know, it less is more sometimes.
Right.
You know,
if
you have the build up. I'm sorry, I was talking over you.
I'm sorry. I thought the cell was overused. They shouldn't have had
in that match. Yes.
Matches. No, they should have only had one. Pick one and
agreed.
Let that one be the one. You know?
Yep.
I think if they held it off for a couple of years, when they bring it out, it means something. Now it's a prop.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's the same thing with the cinematic. The way they're doing the cinematic matches. Look at the Undertaker match with AJ, cinematic, WrestleMania, off the hook. Fantastic. Never been done before. That's something that could be brought back again with Taker. You could have Taker and Sting. You could have where nobody. It's so safe for them, and you still get what you want out of it. But they're starting to do it more and do it more. And maybe it's because of the times it can work. But that's the problem with WWE. Once something works, they hit it and kill it till they beat it to death. And unfortunately, you know, it loses what made it so special in the first place.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Jim Cornette says it all the time. How can I miss you if you won't go away?
It's so true.
You know, let it go away,
yeah,
and then we'll be begging for it.
That's why the territories were an important system. And that's why it worked, because, you know, you could bicycle talent and people and ideas around. So as soon as they got stale, you could send them someplace else and bring them back a year or two later, and they'd be fresh all over again.
Well, we have that now. If someone's sailing this promotion, they can walk 2 streets over and wrestle for that promotion.
You're right, exactly.
In the same building.
Right, and the same night. Same night.
Yeah.
But I'm not bitter.
All right.
Clearly.
Well, that is going to do it for us this week. Don't forget, folks, we want your questions. We want your comments. Send them to us at regenerationnecw@gmail.com, and we will get to them on the air here. We look forward to that. And once again, thank you for joining us. For Joe Matarazzo, Kevin Castro, Sheldon Goldberg here. We'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
The Regeneration Podcast is a production of New England Championship Wrestling. To send us questions, comments, or feedback, email us at regenerationnecw@gmail.com.